Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Unpacking Love. I'm so excited to have a return guest in the house today. We've got Dela. Hey Dela, how's it going?
I'm good. It's good to be back on your podcast.
Yes, oh my gosh, guys, everyone needs supportive friends like Dela. When I tell you, if it's a podcast thing, if it's a YouTube thing, the girl's always there for me. So, Dela, in front of all these people, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for those people who've been listening to the podcast for a while. You know that last summer there was a series of like love stories where I was talking to married couples, and Della and Francis are just both very cute together and then also very funny people. So if you didn't check out that episode, feel free to go check it out after this one. And you can learn how she met Francis and everything about their love story, which is honestly just a beautiful story orchestrated by God Himself. Amen. Now
Amen.
that we have done that introduction, we are going to be talking about Mama's Boy and then kind of put in there Daddy's Girl. And how this even came up was I was doing a flags episode. So the last episode, for people who checked that out, there was a question that came up about Mama's Boys and like how we thought about that, if it was like a red flag or green flag, and it was brief. So then this
Mhm.
is consider it an extended version. We were going to be talking about Mama's Boy and then Daddy's Girl, and just kind of exploring some questions around that. So, Dala, what are some of the definitions that you've come across when it comes to the term Mama's Boy?
Mama's boy. So I think for me, before coming to America, like whenever someone says mama's boy, I always think of someone who has a close relationship with their mother. And that's just it. So like, a boy who is so obsessed with his mom. Um, but then coming here to live here, I've realized that there are other definitions that are in some ways derogatory. I don't know if that's the word to use, but mama's boy is not like a term in good taste. So that's like something that I learned here that, oh, if you date someone who's a mama's boy, then they have like their mom is in everything. So they can't make decisions for themselves. Their mom is like their primary, like, I don't know, contact for everything. They can't stand on their feet. They're probably still living with their mom. Like their mom has a hold over them that they can't seem to shake off. But then I didn't know about that definition until I came to live in the US. So those are the two definitions that I know
Gotcha,
for
gotcha.
mama's
Yeah.
boy. Hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And it's interesting that for you, I think for me, it's actually the opposite, right? So, how I've always known the term mama's boy. And I guess it's actually even influenced by where I've seen the term being used. So, like, most of the
Hmm.
times it would be used on like social media and stuff like that. So, that whenever I hear mama's boy, my mind automatically goes to the one that has the negative connotation, which is basically a man who has no backbone, a man who is completely dependent on his mother. He is not independent. He can't make decisions on his own. And not only that, but the mother makes the decisions for him, right?
Hmm.
Which, I mean, if you think about, say, a single man who's not even dating someone, yeah, that's fine if your mother makes decisions for you and makes calls on your behalf. But in the event that like the guy is now in a relationship with someone, it's very frustrating, right? Because it's like the guy cannot, in fact, some of them, they will not date someone until the mother like actually approves the person, which
Hmm.
I'm not saying that people shouldn't get approval from their parents, because I think that does matter, right? Like your parents can see. When people say love is blind, the people who are outside of the two people, they are not blind. They can see everything. So yes, of course, parents can see red flags when you can't see them.
Hmm.
However, in the case of this like mama's boy type of thing, it's like sometimes with these mamas, it's just there's no woman who could come into the picture who would satisfy their standard. And this is the negative connotation version, like when I'm talking about
Hmm.
this, right? So it's like they've always had an idea of like the type of woman that their son should marry. And because of this, I would even put it in like quotes, this unhealthy relationship that they have with their son. They just,
Hmm.
no matter how good a woman is, they're just not good enough for their son. right? So then maybe in those cases, maybe the mother would then like try and find someone for the son, or like sometimes actually some of those men they'll just stay single because it's just not possible for them to find someone who can satisfy their mother. In the event that like these people do get married, and we'll actually talk about this because I also wonder if people don't pick it up that someone is a mama's boy when they're dating. But anyway, I've also just heard horror stories, just
Mhm.
listen to other podcasts of how marriages end sometimes because mothers, like, the guy's mom is controlling everything. He cannot make any
Mhm.
decisions for his family. Everything has to go through the mother. And if the mother doesn't approve of something, something doesn't happen. Right. So it's
Right.
like, I think whenever I hear the term mama's boy, it's just negative. That's when my mind automatically goes. It's like, oh my gosh, like, no, because essentially at the end of the day, if you're the woman married to this man, you're not married to the man, you're actually married to his mother, and if the
Mm.
mother says jump, you have to say how high, or did I even
Mhm.
say it's the opposite way? So yeah, so I think that's my relationship with the term mama's boy. It's the negative side. But I was surprised, right? Because when I posted this on my Instagram, which is how Della and I even came to talk about having this as a podcast episode. So I posted on my Instagram, I was like, hey guys, this is an ad. Is there someone who's like dating a mama's boy, or who dated a mama's boy? And a few people actually came into my DMs and they're like, oh yeah, like my husband is actually a mama's boy and whatever. And when I would ask them, they'll be like, I'll be like, oh, like mama's boy, how? Like, what do you mean by that? And they're like, oh, I
Mhm.
mean, really close to the mom, right? And I would ask, like, oh, so really close, but they're not necessarily dependent. And they'll be like, no, they're not. And then with Della, when we were talking, I remember you asking me to clarify, like, which type I meant. Like, did I just mean, like, define mama's boy? Is it someone who's like close to their mom, or is it, like you said, the one that's been, I guess, that has the negative connotation that we've seen on social media? So I guess now it's actually new for me to be like, oh, mama's boy can just mean that someone who's really close to their mom, but then they're not dependent on their mom. And I will also say that whenever I have seen that, certain guys are close to their mom, I wouldn't term them mama's boy unless if I saw that they were dependent on their mother. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, so if we go with the definition, which is the latter, the one that I just brought up, right, where it's a guy who has quote unquote an unhealthy relationship with their mother, where they're dependent and they have no independence of their own, they can't stand on their own, they're
Mhm.
heavily reliant on their mom, right? So keeping that definition in mind, are there any pros that you could think of to dating someone like that?
So even before like the whole negative aspect of this individual, this man has a close relationship with their mother, and I feel like, and this might be biased because I'm a boy mom. I feel
Oh.
like I feel like men in that circumstance tend to know how to treat women well. And this might not be entirely true, but then just firsthand, because of how close they are with their mom, they've probably seen like how hard their mom worked, how their mom struggled for them. Also, depending on the circumstance, if it's a single mom situation, so that's also something we need to also factor in.
Mm,
Um, as well, like the circumstances of their relationship. So if the mom is like everything to them, um that's also very key to take note of. But then I just feel like men like that tend to do better when it comes to like relating with women. Again, it might not always cut across, but then
mm.
just from what I've seen, like maybe in movies or in just like other people's experiences, that tends to be a common like pro.
I love that. Do you know what I love most about what you said is how you're like, okay, before we even talk about the negative connotation, there's still some good that actually comes with this man, right? Which is the fact that at the core, I guess something that makes that type of mama's boy similar to the other type where like it's more of they're just close, but not necessarily like there's a dependency there. I think what I really love about that is you're saying for both of those, the common denominator would be the close relation to the mother. And then both of those you would assume would know how to take care of women because of the nature of the relationship with their mothers.
Yes.
Okay. I feel like, you know what? That's fair. I I'll be so honest. I had actually said there are no pros to dating a mama's boy. And honestly, I think it's just because I think it's honestly because like I'm just so put off by the stories I've heard that like it's
Mm.
even been so hard for me to just see that at the core of it, right? Like this person just really knows probably how to treat women. I think another thing that I'll bring up, I don't know if it's a counterpoint or something to consider, is
Mhm.
the fact that like there's a dependency there. So again, we're talking about the one that has more negative connotations with the dependency, right? So because there's
Mhm.
that dependency, I feel like there are also times where, or for the most part, if someone is with someone with who conforms to the negative definition of that term, I think for the most part the woman in the picture, and let's call it a wife right now, so the
Mhm.
wife could actually feel like they come second after the mother.
Mhm.
So then
Mhm.
that part, right, I feel like would be different from someone who's just close to their mother, because even though they're just close to their mother and there's no dependency, they would know to have that boundary of saying like, okay, now that
Mhm.
I'm married, my wife would come first, right?
Yes, that is true. Yeah. So I guess that's definitely a counterpoint because like that unhealthy boundary, um they're not able to prioritize those relationships. So then it's like the relationship with the mother is superseding the relationship they have with their spouse,
Mm-hmm.
which really shouldn't be that way. Like, you know, your wife is your wife, your mom is your mom. There has to be those boundaries. So your wife shouldn't feel like, oh, like, you know, I don't feel like your wife shouldn't feel any less than. They shouldn't feel like their opinions don't count. They shouldn't feel like, oh, you love your mom more than me, because those relationships are different.
Mm-hmm.
So so even like comparing the two doesn't even make sense, because like those are different relationships. A relationship you have with your mom should be different from your relationship with your spouse. But then at no point should your wife feel threatened by your mom to make it feel like your mom is almost like your wife in some cases.
So like she's the first wife.
Yeah, yeah, like your wife's place shouldn't be threatened. Like your wife shouldn't feel like, oh, I'm threatened because because of your mom.
Right.
It
And
shouldn't
and you
be that way.
and you know what? The thing is, guys, as I'm about to say this, me myself, I'm not a marriage minister or a pastor of any sort, but this is just based on at least how I even understand the Bible, right? So the Bible
Mhm.
says in Genesis, like, a man, like after a man finds his wife, he should like, cleave or like hold on to the wife. And
Mhm.
essentially it's like a graduation. Like you
Mhm.
now cling to your wife and you leave your parents' house, right? And I
Mhm.
feel like in the positive definition, which is where someone just has a close relationship to their mother, but they're not dependent on them, they're able to graduate, quote unquote, and realize that, like, you know what, I'm now entering into a new phase of my life where now I'm the head of this family, this
Mhm.
new family that I'm creating, right? And at the same time, the Bible never says, oh, once you're married, stop honoring or respecting your parents. It doesn't say that. You continue to honor them, you continue to love them, but I think there is kind of like a graduation that should
Mhm.
happen. And
Mhm.
I feel like in the negative connotation, that does not happen. It's like it's almost as if, the guy maintains the same kind of like relationship, or still gives their mom the same position they've had since like they were an infant and then like a teenager,
Mhm.
and when they were like a young guy before they got married, and now they're continuing to do that, and mom still dictates anything that happens. So yeah, I think just thinking about those things as well, right? Like, and I love
Mhm.
what you said, that like they're two very different relationships. I don't think anyone would ever say to someone, "Oh, I want you to love your mother," or "I want you to love me more than you love your mother." No one would ever say that. But
Mhm.
recognizing that those are two different relationships, and that at some point when you're now married, you're married to like that person, and it's like a partnership, and you come up with decisions together, and not necessarily like having outside people dictate what happens. I think you can get advice, but then having, people dictate what you do, I think is where it's just
Yeah. I also think in some ways too, like the mom should also set that boundary. Like you also have to recognize that, your son is at a new stage of life where he's trying to start his own family. So he's leaving, what he knows and starting his own.
mhm.
And if you're a good mom, you would like let your son be and let him like, make his own decisions and kind of like guide him. So like even if it's a situation whereby you find that your child is coming back to you, like you setting that boundary as a mom also is helpful. But then what doesn't help matters is when like the moms also don't recognize that new phase of life for their son, and then they just start getting involved in things that's frankly none of their business anymore. um, yeah, so
Right.
I think it's both ways. Like, obviously the son needs to play a role and set boundaries as well, and then the mom needs to recognize and like step down and be like, okay, like
Mm,
you go live your life now. So their relationship will change a little bit,
mhm,
um, to make room for their family that they've started.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
love that a lot.
if you think about it, it's kind of like, when people start dating or when people get married, like sometimes people in their friend group kind of
Mhm,
adjust how they are with them. So like if let's say I have a guy friend and he used to call me every night for like and we'll chat for 3 hours. As a married person, I don't expect that to keep going, and that's something that the person has to adjust on their end.
mhm,
Same with like mother and son relationship. Like maybe there are things that you used to do with your son, like I don't know, like but now that they're starting their own family, you need to recognize the other woman in his life and respect their relationship, and also like, you know, kind of step back in some
mm.
areas if needed. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love what you said, because I think this whole time, the way we're kind of speaking about it, or the way I was thinking about it, was like, oh yeah, the son needs to establish those boundaries, but there is definitely something to be said about the mom too, like recognizing that, you know what, she needs to adjust certain things on her end as well. And I was reading an article earlier on today, because I was like, oh, let me just see what I can find about this mama's boy thing.
Mhm.
And I found this like article, whatever, that someone wrote, where they were talking about with some of the mama's boys, and this is in the negative connotation version, what they actually want is, instead of like having a partner, they almost want to replace the woman in their
Mm,
life, replace their mother with the new woman, right? So like the new woman who's coming in is not going to be seen as like a wife or girlfriend, but they want to be mothered by that person. Which,
mm,
oh, can we unpack that? Because that's a lot, you know. That's a lot. It's like
yeah.
babying a grown man.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, that's definitely a very like bad side to that. So yeah, so like there but in a way though, cause like for me, and I don't mean to like change the topic too much. For me, I'm a daddy's girl. And there were certain characteristics that I saw in my dad. Like I saw my dad's relationship with my mom, and that kind of shaped what I wanted in a partner.
Hmm.
Um, so 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 it's not that like, oh, I'm looking for my dad. That sounds like I have issues. but but in some way, like if your parents' relationship is something that you've seen and it's something that you admire or whatever, is it wrong to say, oh, I like these aspects of their relationship, or I like these qualities in my mom or my dad, and I'm hoping that whoever I'm with would have those like qualities, like so it's kind of like for me, I can't like I see where that's coming from in general, where like guys specifically, like, with the whole mama's boy definition that you shared, tend to like look for their mom in their spouse. So it's almost like they're comparing you. So it's like, oh well, my mom does it this way, or you know I feel like when it gets to that level, that's like, okay, like you need to run. But then I just feel like in general, is it bad for like someone to like want a quality that their parents possess in a potential partner? I know, like,
No, 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 no.
the whole comparison part is like just a red flag, like, like, oh, but my mom does it this way, or my mom does it like, honestly, if someone told me that, I would I would be out the door, because what does that mean?
No, I think going back to what you said about like, what you saw, your parents' relationship, how your dad treated your mom, and all of that made you
Mhm.
want those qualities or characteristics in a partner. That's not, I would not say like, oh, Della, you are looking for a husband to father you. You were
Mm.
just looking for like qualities of like a good man, which honestly I feel like in a healthy family dynamic or whatever, like children would probably want to have some of those things in their own relationships, right? Like, and their own partners, because your parents are somewhat like role models for you. So
Right.
then there's nothing wrong with wanting certain qualities that were in your dad and like a partner.
Mhm.
I think though, switching back to the whole, mama's boy, where he's looking for a mother and not a partner. There's
Mhm.
this article, whatever, that someone wrote, right? And it was like, author Barbara DeAngelis, whoever this person is, describes mothering as a destructive habit that is controlling, treats men like children, assumes that a man can't take care of himself, and makes
Mhm.
a woman act as if her man is incompetent and therefore needs her to run his life. Now, the way that
Mhm.
it's being phrased, it's being written from the article says like, don't mother your boyfriends, right? But if we take
Mhm.
it from like a guy who is seeking a mother and a partner, it's actually a guy who wants to take a back seat in his life, and he wants someone who like assumes his incompetence, right? Like checks on
Mhm.
him on the most simplest of things, which, if you think about it, like when we were all younger, regardless of whether you're like female or male, parents were there to like, guide you step by step, right? As you were a
Mhm.
kid. And so if a man is looking for someone to mother them, they're actually looking for those things. It's almost like you kind of, to me it feels like you're stuck in like this weird child like bubble, right? Because
Mm.
at the end of the day, you as a grown man, or even you as a grown woman, like, you're a human being who's capable of doing things for yourself. You don't need somebody who actually parents you around. What you
Mhm.
need is a partner. So then if you're seeking someone who's going to mother you, do everything that your mother would do for you, then I feel like that is a red flag.
Yeah, and I think a huge part of it is like how those men are raised. So so like you pointed out in the article, like you're literally like just there, and like people are fending for you, and
Hmm.
that's like a way a lot of, well, I don't want to say a lot of men, some men are raised, where you're you know if they have like siblings who are sisters, you can see the difference in how the girls are raised versus the boys. And you know
Right.
everything is like tended to for you, and it's almost as if you can't do anything, like you can't feed yourself, you can't cook for yourself, you can't clean for yourself, like,
Hmm.
because growing up, like, a woman has done that for you.
Exactly.
So then going into a relationship is like expected, like, oh, you have to do this and you have to do that, and it's, yeah. So I think it comes down to like how these men are raised, and
Mm.
and that further leads to how like all of it is also part of their relationship with their moms and everything. But then later on, the way they were raised plays a huge role into that whole dynamic. Because even if we look at the other side, like men who are just close with their moms, like we can see a very big difference in how they live their lives. Like, you don't see that unhealthy dependence, like, and you don't see them like, oh, okay, like, fair enough, they're close to them, but then they're able to make their own decisions because probably they're standing on their own feet. Like,
Hmm.
they have control over their finances and all of that. So uh, I think a lot of it has to do with how men are raised in general, and that kind of leads into the whether you're in the in the bad definition of mama's boy versus the healthy
Hmm.
definition. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and actually, even going further down that road, talking more about like the healthy version. I mean,
Mhm.
we've already touched on the pros, right? Which is that they would know how to treat a woman, and of course, the pros, if you compare them to their brothers who are dependent, they're independent and they are able to make decisions, which is something that's good. I think that okay. When I was having a conversation with like one of the ladies who replied to my Instagram poll thing, they're like, "Yeah, I actually married a mama's boy, right?"
Mhm.
And they were like, "Oh, actually, no, that's not the one who said they married the mama's boy. They dated a mama's boy." But she was like, "I had to be very careful what I would tell him because there were no secrets between him and his mom. So he wasn't dependent on her, but."
Mm.
Because of the close nature of their relationship, he's someone who, had a good relationship with his mom and told his mom everything. So I feel like
Mm.
when I hear things like those, what then comes to my mind is like, and I absolutely love, I'm with you with like, okay, it's really good when someone is close to their, forget even like mother, close to their family. I feel like that's just something that's healthy because if you're, at least if you're planning on like starting a family with someone, you can kind of
Mhm.
get a glimpse of how maybe they would think about relationships and all of that. So I love that. I love it when it's like, oh, they're just close to their mom or close to their parents, close to their siblings. That's beautiful. My only thing would be, I still hope that there would be boundaries, right?
Mhm.
Because you wouldn't want a case where they're so close that your mother-in-law knows what's happening in the bedroom or what is not happening in the bedroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
But then
I
in that
think
scenario though, that's not healthy. That doesn't sound
mm,
like health. Yeah, because I mean, you can be close to someone, but then you need to recognize like where you're at in life. You're not a college student that's like, like you're not a child anymore. Like you're trying to in the case of like a husband or wife situation, like I for me it's just a big no. Like sharing everything with your mom when you're like married, I mean, that doesn't sound like a healthy relationship to me.
oh, I love this. Oh my gosh, so much wisdom. You know what? You're right. Right? Like it's only healthy if your closeness does not mean that you overshare. Like there's still certain things maybe that should still be kept private from like outsiders. So
Of
then if you
course.
are crossing those lines and like saying all those things, then it is entering into that unhealthy
Yeah.
territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if your spouse feels like, "Oh, I cannot share anything with my husband because my mother-in-law is going to hear." Like that is just not. That doesn't even sound like it's a no.
Exactly. Something that you also mentioned, Della, when you were talking, you said that you are a daddy's girl. So let's talk about that, right? When
Mhm.
I hear, and this is the people, I don't know, people might say, oh, the hypocrisy or oh, the double standards. But when I hear daddy's girl, my mind does not go negative. It's just
Mhm.
positive, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I know when you and I were talking on Instagram, this is something that you actually brought up, where you were like, why is it that society, when we say like mama's boy, automatically, or like for the most part, people would think about the negative side, but when we say daddy's girl, people would think
Mhm.
about only positive things. So let's talk about that. What do you think drives that?
Hmm. I don't this is a very loaded question. Actually, I I actually I actually don't know the answer to that. I feel like So a part of me feels like, maybe it's, being a woman, like, the forces behind being a woman is much stronger than being a man, because that's the only thing I can. Because even with like Nollywood movies, for example, where we see, like, for me, that's, where I see like those scenarios where, you know guys have this unhealthy relationships with their moms, and their moms end up terrorizing the wives, and then the husbands are just looking on because, it's my mother and you have to respect her, or whatnot. Like, I and maybe there are not enough examples that I've seen with Daddy's Girls. I Because Daddy's Girls just has like this whole, like, oh, you're so you're so spoiled by your dad, like, your dad is so protective of you. It's like, okay, when you're the only other thing that comes to mind is like, okay, when you're about to get married, like, your dad is like very, very protective of you, and like
Hmm.
kind of, wants to make sure that you end up with someone who is, serious, or a good guy, or whatever. But then beyond that, I've not heard anything where, like, oh, similar to, like, the mama's boy situation, where like the dad has a hold. I'm sure those scenarios exist, for
Hmm.
sure. I'm sure there are scenarios where, you know some dads, again, it depends on the circumstances. Is this a single parent? So if it's a single parent who's a dad, um maybe, and depending on the circumstances of the relationship, does he have like a big say? So they're like, oh, if we have to do this, I have to talk to my dad first, kind of thing. I'm sure that
Mm.
exists. I've not heard of it like very much at all. I'm a daddy's girl, and I don't think that's how I run my life. um, so so I don't know. I actually don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it, right? And I was like, and also, hey, for everybody who's listening, look, me and Dala, we both do not possess anything beyond psychology 101. Did you do psychology 101?
I did in college.
Exactly. So it's been quite some years, but from my psychology 101, which we didn't even learn that, by the way, they were just teaching us about rats and how they like whatever. Let's not even go to the. I really enjoyed Psych 101. All this that I'm about to say is what I'm about to say is not based on any psychology. This is just me talking. This is just me talking my thoughts. Okay, the disclaimer is out the door. I think, right, if we think about just how society has functioned over the centuries, right?
Mhm.
Women have been the dependent one. So like it was like,
Mhm.
okay, as a woman, or actually for both women and men, or when you're still like boys and girls, right? Like your parents will be, coddling you, or like nurturing you, raising you. But then at some point, a
Mhm.
man is expected to graduate into like being a provider for the woman that
Mhm.
he then comes, into partnership with. Whereas
Mhm.
women are not expected to be, say, like providers, right? It's actually like you go from your parents' house and then you get transferred over to your husband's house. And this is probably
Mhm.
more like, I guess for some societies this is like outdated, but like historically, if you think about how society has functioned, men are expected to be independent. They're expected to make decisions. They're
Mhm.
expected to be able to stand on their own. And so when we hear mama's boy, and we're talking about like that dependency on the mother,
Mhm.
that automatically just raises red flags to everyone, because it's like you are not fitting the mold, right? But then if you hear daddy's girl, which I was looking up definitions for that, and what it said, which was interesting, because like I said, I always think about the positive side, but there could be some negatives. So the positive that they said was like, okay, it's just a girl who has a close bond with their dad, right?
Mhm.
Which is very healthy if those boundaries are there. Like, for example, when you're now married, not saying like a whole lot of things that your parents don't need to know. And then
Mhm.
there's the other side where it said, like, for some daddy's girls, though, it translates into that whole thing of, they actually said entitlement. So then it's like if
Mhm.
you grew up as a daddy's girl where like daddy gave you everything, right?
Mhm.
Anything that you wanted could have been luxury. You never heard no, before,
Mhm.
and then daddy cuts you off. And we see this in like some movies, right? Like your daddy cuts you off because the child is misbehaving, then they cut them off their finances or whatever. If that
Mhm.
child doesn't have, if they've been coddled so much by their father that they are not independent, or like they don't have anything going on for themselves, right? Maybe like they were playing in school, or like they just don't have a good job. They don't even know how to take care of themselves. They don't know how to pay their rent. They don't know how to save money, right? Because
Mhm.
daddy always used to provide. That becomes a red flag, because it's like,
Mhm.
oh, like you're so entitled. And now when you're married, like it's hard for you to understand if you are going to be like in a financial bind. It's going to be hard for you to understand because you're always given this stuff. But then
Right.
going back to how society just, for the most part, will automatically say, oh, daddy's girl is not a red flag and like mama's boy is a red flag. I think it does go to like that whole thing of like men are have historically been expected to be independent. And so when a man is dependent on like their mother, then that's seen as weakness. And
Mm.
I think also it doesn't even, I think it doesn't even stop at like say mama's boy, right? A man who's dependent on anybody, you could be a man
Mhm.
who's dependent on your friends, a man who's
Mhm.
dependent on like your siblings, right? You're expecting other people to like take care of your family on your behalf. And I'm saying
Mhm.
this talking about someone who's able-bodied and in their right mind. So they could actually go to work, right? And like they could make something out of themselves. But if you maybe aren't as serious about your life, or maybe the person decided
Mhm.
to go into some other things like maybe alcoholism or like drugs or something like that, and now people have to take care of your family on your behalf, then that's
Mhm.
also not even viewed in a good light. So I think whenever a man has to depend on somebody else, let's not even talk about like, there are also some men who talk about how like, and this has come up on the podcast, some men, not all, some men are like, oh, you know what, I can never have a woman who makes more money than me because,
Mm.
you know, I don't want to be like, or I can never be a stay-at-home dad because I don't want to depend on my wife. So I think in
Mm.
society in general, this is general, like a big generalization, there's an expectation for a man to be independent, whereas when we see a woman who is dependent,
Mhm.
it's like it's
It's
not anything out
accepted.
of the right. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it's
Yeah.
expected, but to your point, it's accepted. So I think that's just one of those things, you know.
Yeah. That's a good point. Because initially I wasn't sure where you were going with that point, but yeah, that's
She's
that's
like, you took us
very
around.
true.
You took.
No, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, cause like you said, like daddy's girl is like almost checking all the boxes of how a woman should be. Like he should be catered to or protected by a man or whatever.
Right.
Whereas for a man, you're expected to get your life together. So when it's like, oh, you're still under the shadows of your mom and your mom is still like kind of controlling your life, then it's like you should be up on your feet by now, almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like even I like what you said too about say like when a woman gets married and it's like, you know, the father wants to like talk to the guy, right? To figure out like is this guy a good guy? And actually even in movies, or not even in movies, even from people's stories that I hear, like sometimes you do hear that like a father will give a guy a hard time. But again, societal expectations are like men are supposed to be strong. So if you go and you meet your girlfriend's father and he is interrogating you, like
Mhm.
literally is an interrogation of, you know, just back to back questions or whatever, you're expected to be able to like take it as a man because yeah, you are a man and he is trying to figure out what are your intentions with my daughter, right? But if we
Yeah.
flip it though, Della, and it's like, okay, a girl's dating a guy and she's talking to the mother of the guy, and let's
Mhm.
say the mother has the exact same interrogation style that like a father would have to like their child's or to their daughter's boyfriend, then that's kind of like because I feel like as women there's a certain way that like there has to be sensitivity in how conversations happen. So then now if you're with someone who needs to be defended by their mom or even like
Mhm.
defended by their dad, it just raises red
Yeah.
flags,
It
you
does.
know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing up the Nollywood examples because that's another thing too with like with the mama's boy thing, right? Because I think something else that I've seen in movies, and not only in movies, I mean I've heard people's stories and like podcasts or whatever, is the
Mhm.
whole thing where like a woman would be like, oh, like his mother or like his sisters would just talk to me anyhow, like they'll
Mhm.
shout at this woman, and then the man doesn't say a single thing, like even though he can see that. And that's another thing too, like can he even see what's wrong with the picture, right? Because sometimes, because they're so blinded by this
Mhm.
dependency or whatever, in their minds, like the default is my mom is going to be right. My mom is right, right? So then
Yeah.
if something happens, and like maybe the way that they're talking to, they being like the mother or like the guy's sisters, the way that they're talking to this wife, or like
Mhm.
their son or like their brother's wife, if it's not okay because of the dependency and just this unhealthy relationship, then the wife ends up not having like someone to defend her.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, not Hollywood gives us material for this. Because like, especially in situations where like, usually like the guy has sisters or he has a mom that's like overbearing, and it's almost as if he can't tell that, that's not right. It always just baffles me. Again, it comes down to how they're raised themselves, and like how women are also treated, how they've seen other women being treated. Because if you see something that's like done wrong a certain way, right, but then that's how it's done like around you, you don't question it. You just think of it as, this is how things are done here.
Hmm.
Versus if you know better and you find yourself in that situation and you're like, no, like this is wrong, and I'm not going to stand for this. So I feel like upbringing plays a huge role. Also, the community that these people find themselves also plays a huge role as well. Because I feel like for a lot of us, like knowing better helps us to identify that this is a red flag. This is not okay. Versus
Mm.
people who kind of grow in those toxic environments and they don't even realize that this is wrong. So
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, yeah. No, honestly. And I guess also, speaking to people who are in relationships right now with mama's boys,
Mhm.
prayers for you.
More like sorrow spray.
And this is the negative version. This is the negative version. I mean, honestly, I'll say sis run, to be honest. If you can see it right now, you're in a relationship and hey, okay, I'm not here to encourage people to leave their relationships, but I'm just saying, I mean, this is what I'll say. I feel like sometimes
Mhm.
with any type of behavior, you can see something, right? And actually
Mhm.
recognize that, okay, there's this going on. And let's even move away from the mama's boy thing. Maybe like you realize that my partner lies, right? Like my
Right.
boyfriend, my girlfriend is a liar.
Mhm.
You've already seen it through the dating process, but
Mhm.
then you now marry this person, and in your mind you expect them to change, right? So
Mhm.
I think if it's like a behavior that comes up once you're now married to someone, like I get it. It's like, oh wow, this person, like I couldn't see signs of this before, and then this has just come up and it's just negative stuff. But then if you have seen certain things, right?
Mhm.
Like especially now with the age that we're at, where it's like, okay, well now it's like, some years after college or whatever. At
Mhm.
this point, if you're talking to someone, you need to kind of see that like that independence. So if you don't see independence in a guy, then that might be something that's like worrying, and that could be like a red flag that you had actually seen earlier. I think something that you had also mentioned earlier, Dala, was, sometimes with the mama's boys, they actually still live with, their mom. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I guess it's all also in context, because sometimes it is a, a negative thing in the sense that like maybe this person, and maybe they live with their parents, and they just blow money on useless things, right? Like they're
Mhm.
buying the top cars, they're always partying, they have no savings, they're not working towards something. That's negative. But if someone
Mhm.
say is still living with their mom, but then in having conversation, it's because like they're saving money to buy a house, that's different, right? So it's like
Mhm.
all those things is kind of like, okay, in context, what does that look like? And then
Right.
what is your gut telling you at the end of the day? And one of the Instagram replies that I got from one of the girls was she replied and she was like, "Oh yeah, I married a mama's boy, right?" And I was like, "Oh really? Which type?" And then she's like, "Oh, he's just like really close to his mom." I was like, "Oh okay, cool." And I was like, "Oh, I guess that's all cool, right? As long as they're like boundaries and that type of conversations."
Hmm.
So then she was like, "Yeah, but then also on the flip side, as a boy mom, let some girl come into the picture and tell me I need to have boundaries, right?" She was like,
Oh my
"Forget about
goodness.
boundaries."
See, that's the thing. That's the thing. You guys need to start raising like men who have sense, because that's where things go wrong when moms or parents, not moms, because it takes two to raise a child,
Mhm.
depending on the circumstances. But I feel like the upbringing plays such a big role in how these men turn out.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like it's very, very crucial. So like for me, like I feel like and it's something that my mom has told me. Like she's told me like, look, your husband is a great cook. He's very present in the home and everything. This
Mm.
should guide you on how you raise your sons if you have any. So
I love
don't end
that.
up being like see the example that you have and do better with
Mm.
your
Mhm.
sons. Essentially was the advice she gave me, and that's like something that I am determined to take seriously because I know how that has served me. And sometimes people look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're so lucky. Like your husband is like this, is like this." Um, Obviously, there's no perfect person, but then it's just so sad how a lot of men have just fallen short because they were not raised right, which is
Mm.
that's bottom line. Um, just you know, not raised right, and these men become fathers and they become husbands and the cycle continues. So
Ah,
yeah.
wow. Very, very wise words from Dala here. Very, very wise words that, what, I guess this new generation, as we raise kids, thinking about some of those things, right? It's like, okay, maybe growing up, you saw certain things that you're like, this is actually not good.
Right.
Whatever stereotypes there were in like the home that you grew up in, and recognizing those and being like, you know what? Need to make some updates and some changes to this, so that in the future, right, you end up raising people who are, outstanding husbands and outstanding wives. So, yeah. Anything else on your mind, else?
Nothing else on my mind. This was just a really good discussion for me, and also like with you putting this up on your Instagram stories, and us having that discussion there really kind of, because I mean, I'm not even going to pretend and say I didn't know the other side of like Mama's Boy, but for me, because of my experience, and I think it's the same for a lot of people. Like because of my experience, like when someone says Mama's Boy, I'm thinking of the good Mama's Boy,
Mm-hmm.
because I haven't experienced like I mean, I might have heard of it or anything, but then from my point of view, I'm like, okay, it can be a healthy relationship. Again, being a boy mom, um, it can be a healthy relationship, but at the same time, there's a very, very, very thin line where things can just go like south. And a lot of it is both parties. So both mom and son setting boundaries and just recognizing um the phase of life of where their son is at, and just like taking a step back and respecting themselves and not doing the most. um
Mm.
I think part of it happens when the mom doesn't realize, like given like what your friend mentioned when she was like, oh, let some girl tell me about boundaries, for example.
She
Like
was like, what and who is a boundary?
exactly, so just like just recognizing like, okay, my son is in this phase of life where he's going to start his own family. I need to take a step back and respect that relationship, because a lot of it is like respecting that and like knowing your place.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not going to have another mother. Like a mother is a mother. Like
Mm-hmm.
a wife can never take the place of a mother. A
Mm-hmm.
mother cannot take a place of the wife. People just need to realize their parts. It's like you're in a band and everyone is singing their parts. Like do your role. Don't like do what is expected of you. Don't like overstep on boundaries and then cause problems, and then people are wondering like where do I sit in all of this.
I absolutely love it. I love just how you brought all the points together and you summarize it. And I think also something to think about, especially for like our generation,
Hmm.
as our generation now starts to raise kids, right? It's like, okay, when your son is now getting married, right? The
Hmm.
way that you treat your daughter-in-law, how would you feel if your daughter was being treated like that
Hmm.
by the
Hmm.
family that she married into, right?
Right.
Because if you wouldn't want your own daughter to get married to someone whose mother was like running the show, then it also
Hmm.
just tells you that you should not be running the show for like, your your son. So I think just think about a lot of those things, like, okay, how would I feel if I was in that situation, would also help. And you know what, for anyone who's listening, who's like, wow, I'm starting to see symptoms that I'm a mama's boy. I'm starting to see that. So I'm starting to see symptoms that I'm a daddy's girl. And for both of these, the more negative side, right? Where like there's too much dependency and you can't stand on your own feet. It's never too late to start changing and to start making steps. There are some people who I've had conversations with where, like that transition from, okay, I was in college and maybe like I used to depend on my parents, and now it's time for me to start making like my own decisions. There's some people who I've talked to where you can almost feel like they feel like if they do anything contrary to what their parents are saying, then
Hmm.
they feel like it's just going to harm their relationship with their parents, or they don't want their parents to feel disrespected. So for example, right,
Mm.
sometimes parents, because of just the close bond that they have and the love that they have for their children, they might not want you to move out. So you might actually be
Mm.
given that option to just stay home, right? But then if you are like, you know what, all my life I've stayed home and I need to like now step into adulthood and like
Mhm.
figure out life, like how to pay my own bills and how to do so, you should still do it, because at the end of the day, even your parents went through that. So there has to be
Mhm.
that transition. And like of course it could suck for them for some time because you
Mhm.
left, right? But it's part of that transitioning and that growing up and figuring your life out. So yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Della, for coming on here with the wisdom. You always just have the
The
right things to say
wisdom.
on the podcast. So honestly, thank you so much for coming. I enjoyed our discussion.
I did too. Thank you for having me. And hopefully I can come again.
Oh, girl, yes, and thank you for engaging. You see what happens, people, when you engage with me on Instagram. You come on an episode. Wow, look at
Wow.
that.
So that's all it takes.
Oh
That's all
my
it
gosh.
takes.
Hey, it's not just about sliding into the DMs. It's about how good the discussion is. So be like Della. If you want, be like Della. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, also, if anyone is listening and they're like, I have actually dated a daddy's girl and seen the negative side of things, please come to the podcast, because I definitely want to have like a balanced view. Obviously, I only see things the way I see them because it's like through my lens. But
Mm.
like Della said, there's so many situations out there. Maybe like a guy who is not a mama's boy but is a daddy's boy, or like a girl who's a daddy's girl but it's like on the negative side. Feel free to come on the podcast so that we can have some of these conversations. So yeah, thanks so much for listening. Make sure you guys leave stars on the podcast, guys. Leave some ratings on the podcast, okay?
Yes, 5 stars only, okay? If it's not 5 stars,
Amen. If it's not 5 stars,
don't
don't
even
do it.
bother. Yes, keep it to yourself.
Keep it to yourself. I'm done. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for listening. And Dels, thank you so much for being here. I will catch you guys in the next episode. Peace. Ndiwe wandiro ya moyo wangu.
Ramadan.